Hello and welcome to the channel. For episode 8 in the series of bringing back to life Barney the Barn Find 1981 Honda CT 110 Trail. In this episode I'll change the rear sprocket, fit a new drive chain, check the points, adjust the ignition timing using a homemade timing light. There's a problem with the cheap clone carburetor, and finally there was a mistake on the exhaust system. Some of you may have spotted that already. So let's just get straight into it. So we can see the drive chain is worn out. We can tell that in a number of ways. Look how far back the axle has been adjusted, so the chain is stretched and it's virtually on the limit of its adjustment. And what else we can do, put a little bit of tension on the chain and we can see just how far the chain will lift off the sprocket. And also, if I look at the teeth, they're completely gone, so we need a new sprocket. And also a lot of movement there, too much movement, and that probably indicates that the cush drive rubbers behind here are perished and need replacing. That's the rear wheel removed, and now you can see just how bad the teeth are. They're worn and they're broken off, chipped at the top there. This sprocket is the one riveted on, and look at that, that seems to have been ground off. So, remove the circlip or snap ring. And we have this plastic cover which is broken. So I've got some more rubbers, and this is a 45 tooth sprocket which will gear the bike down slightly. So instead of a 40, it's got a 45. So 1 tooth increase on the front sprocket is more or less the same as a 3 tooth decrease on the rear sprocket. So this is virtually, with a 40, is the equivalent of running an almost a 16.5, almost a 17 tooth front sprocket. And what I'll do, so I'll change the rubbers out, check the wheel bearings, give everything a good clean and put it back together. And with the rear brake, this is really stiff, almost seized, so it's a simple job. Knock that out, clean it up and put it back in. So swap the sprocket, put the circlip on, swap the rubbers, slight little bit of movement which is normal. Now what I'll do, I'll run a new chain to the old, thread it through. Well, that's the new chain in place. Swap the sprocket. Wasn't a new sprocket. Yeah, it's a bad idea to mix and match old and new sprockets and chains. That sprocket will only be just for a short time until the new one arrives in the post. Recently I replied to a comment from a fellow YouTuber, John Doc. He's got a really good YouTube channel, does some excellent work on there, really good work. Check out his channel if you haven't seen it. It used to be John Doc Restorations, and now he's changed it to Doc on Wheels. So check out Scotsman John Doc if you get a chance. But my reply to John Doc was saying, just when you think you've seen everything, something new comes along. And well, that happened to me again this week with Barney. As you saw, I changed the OEM carb for a real cheap nasty one, just to get Barney running. I hadn't flushed out the tank properly. I hadn't had time to service the OEM K-Hin carb, so I put on a real cheap nasty carburetor. Well, what's the point of all this? Well, I decided to remove the plug there to clean out the fuel filter that's in there. And what happened, as I put the spanner on there, it simply crumbled. The plug underneath, the drain plug, simply crumbled away as if it was made of almost, I can't say plastic because it was worse than plastic, it was like a biscuit or a cookie. Absolutely terrible. So what I did, I removed the float bowl, and even then, using some grips, I was unable to remove the plug from the bottom. And in the end, I had to swap the whole float bowl for a different one. Well, here is the old float bowl, and you can see where there should be a nut on there to allow you to undo this plug with a spanner. It's just completely sheared off, and it's just all crumbling away. So yet another reason why not to buy one of these cheap clone carburetors. If you're out on a trip and decided to clean the fuel filter, and this happened to you in the middle of nowhere, you'd be stranded. So OEM carb is the best way with OEM replacement parts. And the irony is, after all this hassle, there wasn't even a filter in there in the first place. Terrible. So we'll look at checking and setting the ignition timing. This bike, the 1981 bike, still has points or contact breakers. I've removed the two plugs, the inspection plugs, from the left cover, and I'll use a 19mm socket to turn the engine over. Now most people will know how to do this, so apologies if you've seen all this before, but there are some people out there who this is all new to them, so this is for those people. First thing you need to do before you can check your timing, you need to set the gap of the points, the contact breakers, just in there, and the spec for that is between 0.3 to 0.4mm, which is around about 12 to 16 thousandths of an inch. You'll need some feeler gauges. You can get those in metric or imperial. These are metric, and you can see there's a 0.3 or a 0.4. What I'm going to do with the 0.05 together with the 0.3, I'm going to set my points gap to 0.35, which is round about in the middle. And so we need to turn the engine over until the points are on their widest gap. And what you can do, if you look at the gap there and the cams on the opposite side, as we turn the engine over, you'll see the gap will reduce and the points will open. There we have the points at their widest, and then we simply place the feeler gauges in the gap. Just a nice sliding fit. And they're fine. If we need to adjust the gap, we slacken this screw and this screw using a screwdriver just in there between the two lugs and the slot. We can adjust the points to give us our correct gap. And so for my timing light, I've simply got an old lamp holder from a headlamp from an old postie that I've got. So that's already got a 6-volt globe in it, and I'm using a 6-volt battery. And what we do, disconnect the wire from the contact breakers or the points, and we click a lamp onto one side and then on to the battery. Now, we need the light somewhere where we're going to be able to see it. And now the negative from the battery, I'll simply connect there, ground to the engine. And what I'll do, I'll slowly turn the engine over, and what will happen, the light will be on for much of the time. And as the light goes off, at the point that the light goes off, that is when our spark's occurring. So same again, we can watch the cam coming around, and just as the light goes off, we can then check our timing marks looking through the inspection hole. So getting close, there. I think that's a little bit too dark to see, but the pointer there, we've got the F and the actual line is there. And so now what we'll do, I've tried to get in close, but obviously my hands will be in the way. Loosen these two slightly, and then we can slowly twist the base plate around. We can put a screwdriver in there if you wish. And what I'll do, I'll put it just about where Mr. Honda says it should be. I'll just nip that slightly and then we'll recheck. Well, it took a bit of fiddling around, but eventually I've got it there through rotating the points plate, checking when the light goes out, and looking at the timing marks, the line next to the F, just as the light goes out. Well, the exhaust, the muffler had some surface rust. I had planned on removing it, taking the shields off and coating it with some of the engine enamel that I had left over after I painted the cylinder. Well, one thing I noticed, probably some of you eagle-eyed viewers spotted a long time ago, the heat shield is the wrong way around. These shields are not symmetrical. The giveaway is, if you look between the front and back chrome shields, there's a gap there, and what it is, the easiest way to tell, count the slots. 4 slots on that side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slots on that side, and we need the longer end towards the front of the bike to cover up the area just there. Well, I've quickly switched the shield around. 6 slots at the front and 4 slots at the back now. The gap is reduced at the front and there's a little tailpipe there at the back. So watch out for that. That will catch you out.